really quickly here, I want to go through, you have this book right here,
Yeah.
10 Most Misunderstood Words in the Bible. I'm going to go through 3 with you that, when I heard these, it gave me a lot of peace because these words cause so much confusion for people. And the first one I want to talk about is salvation. I always used to think that salvation means heaven. It means if someone is saved, if they have salvation, that means they're going to heaven. And if someone's not saved, no salvation. And then I thought about it. Salvation is literally the word save.
Right.
I can be saved from hell, or I can be saved from stubbing my toe, or I can be saved from drowning, or I can be saved. You can use that word in so many contexts, but we go in the Bible and we act like it's literally can only be used in one context.
Yeah, so people can check it out if they have time, but what I suggest is in the Old Testament, the various Hebrew words for save or deliver or rescue never, not once, refer to salvation from eternal condemnation, what we think of as salvation. In the New Testament, 30% of the time, save, which is sozo is the verb, soteria is the noun, those words 30% of the time refer to having eternal life, escaping eternal condemnation. 70% of the time, they refer to what they do in the Old Testament, which is deliverance from problems in this life. For example, when Jesus would heal the sick, he would often say, "Your faith has saved you." Well, now the modern translations tend to say something like, "Your faith has made you well."
Yeah.
"Your faith has healed you."
Yeah.
Or like in James 5:15, James says, "If anyone among you is sick, let him call for the elders, they'll anoint him with oil, and the prayer of faith will save the sick." Well, that's not talking about salvation from hell, it's talking about being healed.
Yeah.
And so most translations now say, "will heal the sick." But the thing is, that's true all the way through the New Testament, is 70% of the time, saved refers to some sort of deliverance. For example, like there was an airliner that crashed in the Potomac, and 7 people were saved from the wreckage, and they were pulled out by a helicopter. Well, when the news report said 7 people were saved, 5 people were saved, nobody thought, "Oh wow, these people became Christians."
Yeah.
Right? And we hear this all the time. You know, there was a ship that was hit by a torpedo, and 300 souls were lost, but 100 people were saved. Well, we don't think those 100 people became Christians. And the same thing is true in the New Testament. You got to look at the context and study it. And I urge all of you to do that study. It's a wonderful study. Take the time to get a concordance out and look up every use of save and rescue in the Old Testament. Do the same thing in the New Testament and see for yourself. Don't have secondhand faith where someone else tells you this is. Look at it for yourself.
Yeah, and you mentioned another word in there, and just by your usage, I can point out another thing. Is you said 300 souls were lost, 100 were saved. If someone read 300 souls were lost in the Bible, they would think 300 souls went to hell.
And yet lost there means dead, and that's true often.
But they think because it's soul and lost, or soul and death, that must mean hell. But a lot of times in the past, I mean, you're older than me, people would say soul, a lost soul just meant death. It didn't imply lake of fire, eternal death.
That's common in nautical stuff when you talk about souls lost at sea. And it's when I studied, and I have a chapter on lost in there, it's the Greek word apollume is the verb, and it about 90% of the time it refers to death or destruction. Only 10% of the time does it refer to escaping eternal condemnation. Now, one of those is John 3:16, right? But that's a rare use of apollume.
And so when it says work out salvation with fear and trembling, I hear this one a lot.
Philippians 2:12.
What would the salvation in that case be?
Yeah, if you look at the context earlier, the word soteria or salvation occurs 3 times in the book. Philippians 1:19, Philippians 1:26, Philippians 2:12. In 1:19, he says, "I know that your prayers and the supply of the Spirit will work out for my soteria, my salvation."
Yeah.
Then in 2:12, he talks about your soteria. Work out your own salvation. Well, whatever their salvation is comparable to my salvation in 1:19. Well, Paul was already born again. He wasn't saying that their prayers were going to get him to heaven or the supply of the Spirit was getting. He was saying, look, I'm in prison. This is one of the prison epistles. And he was saying that your prayers and the supply of Spirit will see to it that I glorify God through this imprisonment. And the people in Philippi were being persecuted, and he was saying, work out your deliverance from your persecution in a God-honoring way. And he goes on to say in verses 15 and 16 that you shine as lights in the darkness. You're in a dark generation. And remember, Jesus said we're to let our light shine before men. So the whole point of working out your own soteria, your own deliverance, is that you would, in a God-honoring way, handle persecution such that at the judgment seat of Christ, you would hear, well done, good servant.
Yeah.